Hi, Louise. How are
I
you?
got your voice note there just now as well. So yeah, I've just picked that up. So thank you. We're
One
here.
moment, because we don't have volume.
Oh,
I'm not hearing you yet.
oh, wait a minute. What have I done? Hmm.
Ah, now I can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Oh, I'm so jealous of your background just now.
Thank you. I actually was thinking this is a funny spot, not my typical spot. And so I'm getting all kinds of interesting shadow on the face, but we'll just go
Oh,
with it.
oh, incredible. Do you know, I love being in nature. As you know, you'll probably have seen from my profile and my pictures and things like that. I am always in the forest, always in nature. And it's 10 back of 10 in the UK just now, so I'm really envious of your background of the nature.
Yeah. I'm trying to soak it up because I know fall and winter are on their way. So it's like, I mean, technically we're in fall, but it'll become cooler and wetter soon. So remind me where you are.
I'm in Scotland in the UK.
Okay. Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited. Welcome. Welcome to the Wealthy
Thank you.
Creative.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I'm excited to dive in and get to know you a bit. And for those catching the replay to get to know you as well. So maybe you want to share just a little bit about what you do and kind of what brought you to this work. I know sometimes that can be a lot to share, but whatever's on your heart and present for you, I would love to just start there.
Yeah, thank you. So I am Louise, I am Fernando, and I'm a business mindset and energetics coach. And I just think even saying mindset never covers it all because it's never just about the mind. It's so much deeper in the body and there's just so many different like levels to that. So my kind of background, I previously experienced trauma in my own life and broke through many generational traumas within my own family, mother wounds, father wounds, domestic abuse, things like that. Lots of different traumas from the age of 6 up until in my 20s. I am so I really had a pivotal moment when I was in my 20s when I had my children and thought, no, I'm not available for this. This is no longer who I am. And I broke a lot of limits then and then entered into the world of counselling. So entered into the world of counselling and social work, and addictions, trauma, helping many thousands of people that had experienced something like I had experienced as a child and as an adult. And from the level of not wanting to save the world, but wanting them to see that there was hope. There was another way of being, another way of breaking these limits. So my background was in criminal justice, working with offenders of all different types of
Mm.
offences, and really working on. I was always the devotion to seeing change and deep transformational change in terms of knowing that it was never about a goal or a plan or having a strategy. It was far deeper than that. The level of change that comes for people is really in their body. It's in
Mm.
their body, So my work is based on that.
Okay.
All of this experience and now working with business owners to break through their patterns. I'm a big person of seeing through someone's lips and being able to really hone in on stuff that they can't see. I'm also psychic, so that kind of weaves into the
Yeah.
work as well. Like, yeah, I've been psychic since I was probably discovered that about 5 or 6 years old. And
Mm.
yeah, so that's where that's the work and that's what has brought me to the place that I'm at now. With the work that I do with clients, with the work I do with myself, and just that deeper knowing, just that deeper
Beautiful.
levels. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for kind of sharing your journey. I know it's deep and wide, so that's like the tip of the iceberg
snapshot. Yeah.
usually. Yeah, but I really appreciate the snapshot. And yeah, it's interesting how the overlap in some of our journeys. I know you worked as a counselor as well in addiction. I've also have that background, and it's kind of a without setting that pure intention, it was kind of just a God carved path for me to
Yeah.
work with other um, therapists, coaches, just helping professionals, medical
Hmm.
practitioners, et cetera, in general, that really just want to shift their own patterns. And it sounds like, now that you're working with business owners, that there's a lot of overlap in some of our work. One of the things that I'm most interested in that you shared was your background in being psychic. I know for me, I know and see a lot, but because of patterning,
Hmm.
I cut off a lot of that for a very long time because it wasn't safe to see so much until, as an adult, we have the power to kind of choose to see as much and to
Hmm.
peel back the layers. So I'm kind of curious, knowing that you've had that awareness for as long as you have,
Hmm.
how that may or may not have been woven into your work as a counselor, and if that had anything to do with you shifting into becoming a coach.
Well, yeah, and so when I was younger, and people may relate to this, but I always had a sense that there was more, and I was always encouraged to read tea leaves and play with tarot cards from a very young age. And when I think about that now, like 40 years ago, I'm 45 now, but like 40 years ago, that would have been quite unheard, like for someone to pull out tarot and tea leaves and things like this. So my grandparents, they spent a lot of time doing that with me, and now, when I think about it, they must have known themselves. I dulled that part down on me. There was a part that I was very, very frightened of. I was frightened of the ability that I had. I was frightened of the truth, of the accuracy of the intuition that I had as a young child. I would know things way before they happened, and
Mhm.
would sense things in conversations, and and it frightened me as a teenager. So I remember saying to myself, I can't go there. I'm not going there. I'm going to dull this down, and
Mhm.
psychically cut myself off,
Yeah.
like chop, 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 chop. And it was probably around my late 20s, way before manifestation was mainstream, like any of that. But I manifested myself out of the house that I was in, and manifested myself into a new property. And there was no way I could have had that property. It just wasn't logical the way that it happened. And now when I look back, I realize now I was using a lot of that back
Mhm.
then,
Mhm.
but taming it,
Yeah.
and then really I really surrendered to that part of me that's really just I remember saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. And allowing that part to come through. And there was lots of different things that came through. Like I remember my gran being in hospital, and my granddad telling her about her new kitchen suite that was getting put into the kitchen. And my intuition said, you won't ever see that kitchen. And I remember at the time really thinking, oh, what a terrible thing to say about my gran. But deep down, I knew she would never leave the hospital. And she
Mhm.
did. She never did. She never did. She died in the hospital. So I think that was a big awakening again for me around the psychicness. And you will relate to this, but just using it in your work, just using it to uncover layers and uncover patterns that are not logical in the mind. It's
Mhm.
like just knowing when someone's got a sore back, or when there's a pattern deeper playing out that's coming from something beyond their conscious awareness, and being able to I guess, get there faster than years of like therapy or digging up the back garden or,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
just stripping away the layers.
And just to clarify, because I couldn't 100% tell with the accent, but did you say that I would relate or wouldn't relate?
You
I
would
might,
relate.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
do, for
yeah.
sure.
And just fully surrendering into that psychic ability of being able to help clients faster because of this, and asking clever questions. I always say, like, just knowing when the right time to ask the questions are, or knowing when to not push, or knowing when to pull back, or,
Yeah.
always guided by intuition, always guided by that psychicness. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, the psychic journey.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like we have so many overlaps because I know for me that was a lot that came naturally. Even though I did train as an art therapist, once I was in private practice, it was an awareness of like, this is just beyond the training. Like, what's coming through is not, I haven't been taught this per se because I was doing more than
Mhm.
just art therapy, and had to really come into how do I say, like an acceptance of my power, that this is way more natural, than maybe like traditional counseling versus I would happen to
Yeah.
be art therapy. So they're a bit different, but that there was just so much more to my knowing, and being at peace with that. To harken back to what you were saying, there was some fear initially, a fear of knowing so much so fast,
Yeah.
and being startled by it, because a lot of times maybe the clients weren't ready to see some of that and know some of that. And so that was a dance in and of itself that informed, okay, so my dream clients are ready
Mhm.
for that. They are ready for this much sight. And even my programs now are a lot around that sight and that blind sense, and
Mhm.
seeing beyond the 3D. And so I yeah, I find it very fascinating too, knowing that you were in the criminal justice system, that you were carrying this superpower with you, but then knowing, like, do they want that superpower,
Yeah, and that was very interesting actually, because I felt like I used that gift intuitively in that setting, like used that gift intuitively just to know what the right questions were to ask, when to to pursue forward with something, and just really just knowing within my own body, and picking up on their, like, you're right, it's the dance, isn't it? It's the dance of the two souls together, and knowing what's going on back and forward, and reading way reading their energy, reading, and seeing transformation unfold because of that.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually, it took me a minute to find language for that dance, but that's part of why I love the tantra journey so much in my work. I found the words, the feather and the sword, because it's like knowing when to be really sharp and when to be soft, and
Yes.
that all of that is allowed. There's this, yeah, call it equanimity, if you will, of like, it's all allowed, like every aspect of self. So really beautiful that, you are in that journey of accepting your own superpowers, and then now in a place that you get to kind of share that with business
Mhm.
owners, it sounds like. So you made the
Mhm.
transition out of the justice system into the business
The
sector.
coaching,
And
yeah.
yeah, I would love to hear kind of the decision behind that, and where you're at now, and what you love playing with now.
And I think even that was an interesting journey, because I always, at the beginning, I decided to empower people. I was like, I wanted to just empower people. So I come into the coaching space to empower and transfer all these gifts, and it never works out the way that you plan. Of course
Oh,
it
sure.
doesn't. You have to just go with what you're given, and what you're producing. And I started to attract a lot of business owners, initially. I was like, oh no, I'm not ready for it. No, no. And I almost resisted that. And then
Hmm.
I stopped myself and thought, why am I resisting this? What is playing out that I'm resisting? What's the resistance about? And it was that feeling of not feeling good enough or not feeling experienced enough in business to be able to work on that level, but actually attracting in a lot of I don't like using the word higher level business owners, but most established business owners
Or
because
established entrepreneurs versus
because
newbies.
yeah, because I was able to see very quickly what was going on in their business, the gaps and the opportunities, and I'm not afraid of holding the space for someone, but I'm also not afraid of calling out the blind spots either. So I think that really started to change the paradigm for the business and where things kind of went from there. And it was never the path that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it
It
rarely
was
is
just
it? Yeah.
never. I mean, and I started attracting in a lot of male clients. In fact, I remember saying to my husband, do you know, I think it would be really cool if I brought in some male clients. Like, I just feel like I need some male energy in the business. And of course, it happened so quickly. Like, I started taking in male clients from there. And yeah, and well, you know how this works because when we make a decision and when we cast this spell into the universe and into our fields, it can come really
Mm.
quickly.
Yes.
And sometimes I have to say, okay, before I put this out there, do I want this? Do I
Yeah.
really want this? Because we know how quickly this can materialize.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, this has been the journey for me over the last, and right now there's a new deepening going on. I feel like collectively there's a
Sure.
big deepening going on for me. And just a few days ago, we've our family had a bereavement. We lost our sister-in-law a few days ago. So I'm feeling that there's a real deep thing going on in me, within the collective, within everything else. I think there's shifts happening universally across the
Sure.
world. There's something shifting, I feel. That's all I
Yeah.
know just now. I just have that sense that there's something shifting deeper.
Yeah, there is. And remind me, I think, are you also a projector? Do
I
I?
am a
Okay,
six
I thought,
two.
yeah, I thought we had that conversation. And um my awareness of this is where it is that um kind of closer to 2027 that things are really going to kind of break apart even further, where we've been in a paradigm of kind of masculine, feminine. It's like that's
Yeah,
just not going to fare well anymore because there is kind of an insistence on integration. So when you talk about deepening, I know for me, that's the deepening I'm in, is that I operated in one way, one level of consciousness, and it served me very well until it didn't. And I was ready for the next level of consciousness, and
yeah,
that served me really well until it didn't. And there's just like these cycles where my current season is very much about honoring the role of the masculine and feminine in this very
yeah,
sacred union. And part of that, I haven't always put the best words to this or the yeah, very eloquently because of my own like edge with language and feeling it, but not having the language for it, has been around therapy being kind of like and counseling would be considered that as like a
yeah,
primary, almost feminine, um,
yep,
what's the word? Feminine mentorship, because there's a lot of space holding, there's a lot of allowing, human, like client led, and
yeah,
it's very open ended in that way. And then coaching being this very like goal, smart goals, directional, so it has a very masculine. And so I feel like we're very much in a period of where therapy and coaching are going to just start to integrate, because it is this feminine masculine integration. And I'm kind of surprised at times that there's not more of a what's that word? Like I can't think of the word, but there's like requirements as a therapist, and you have, you have to be licensed, and there's just this governmental boards and et cetera. And there's not so much of that in the coaching world. So it's a
No.
little bit like the Wild West. And so I watch it all and I'm like, this is so interesting that it's still not been regulated. That's
Yeah.
the word I was looking for. But I
Yeah.
have continued to say for some years now that I personally feel therapists make some of the best coaches and mentors, and coaches and mentors who are then trained in, be it trauma informed care
Yeah.
or therapeutic principles or depth
Hmm.
psychology or whatever the thing. But it is this feminine masculine bridge that I feel makes some of the most potent mentors. And when someone is still identifying as like, oh, I'm only a strategist, or I'm only a feminine embodiment specialist or whatever, then that just tells me that they haven't within themselves
Yeah.
kind of integrated their own alpha, omega, masculine, feminine. So we're in some very juicy times. It's kind of like being alive for COVID, right? We're like watching
Yeah.
popcorn. Who needs TV? We're living in the middle of the most incredible um period of just like rapid evolution, with technology, with AI, with integration, all the things.
And that is like another conversation. I mean, there's a whole depth to that conversation, isn't there? I mean, really about what's going on in the world and the divide. And this is something that keeps coming true for me as well. Like, it's all about division, and that's not what we need. Is unity, unity, being together, like seeing, as you say, that the masculine and the feminine together, that integration and that unity. But everywhere that you look, there's separation or a trying of separating to
Mm,
try and separate when really we need to, as to move forward and evolve, in my opinion, is to come
yeah,
together and not have these divides, not have these divides of you're there and I am there and you're here and you're over there, but this beautiful communion together.
yeah.
And I think that is coming. I think a lot of people, um, over the last year, I've seen such a shift in terms of what people want and what they think they needed are two different things in terms
Sure.
of like
Yep.
having that locked in groundedness. That's
Yeah.
yeah. I did a post on this last week around if I could just sell peace, this feeling of groundedness in my body, that is priceless, priceless. That deep, locked in, grounded, moving from space to space throughout your day, moment to moment, checking in with yourself, being like, and feeling that pure presence.
Yeah.
That is priceless.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that's a real pillar in my business and foundation of, the work that I do. And it sounds like for you too. And so it is beautiful that we both serve business owners, because I'll never forget the moment I was sitting on my carpet, different house, different state, all the things, but I had a book, and going back to the psychic piece, I was just reading one sentence, and it was as if the sentence came off the book and was like highlighted. And it was just a flash of knowing, like, okay, you are about everything that as it is about to shift rapidly. Because I was a expressive arts mentor and supervisor and had a team of 10. And that is very shocking for the human self who's running a whole thing and managing a whole thing, to then be aware that like this is all about to disintegrate, because
Yeah,
you are going to be leading this conscious movement in business in a way that, yes, you're doing it now, but your ripple effect is smaller here. So
yeah,
it needs to be moved over here to have an even bigger ripple effect. And I just remember it was like neon yellow, right? Like and then to just like grab a hold of like, okay, hold on to your roller. It's like being on a roller. I keep wanting to say roller skate, but that's not the word. What is that? Can't think of the
Oh,
word.
a roller coaster. Yeah,
Roller
just
coaster. Thank you.
yeah.
I use roller skating and various analogies so often that one's imprinted. But yeah, I just had to like grab a hold of the side of the roller coaster because I knew something big was about to shift. And it's so yeah, it's just very interesting to be in these human bodies, but knowing that you're really not in control.
Yeah.
There's like a very little control here, and it's more about going and following that divine guidance and that divine knowing and submitting to that, really. Like there's a dance between surrender and submission, which I
Yeah.
tend to think of as physical stillness versus physical action, but they're
Yeah.
both in presence.
Mm.
And
Ab-
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that for me was a big thing because of the trauma I'd experienced as a child. My need to control things as an adult was quite evident, always having to control everything and everyone. And when all that lost everything, I had no control, no control. And the realization that you just surrender, but move and surrender and move in those moments as you do, you're submitting to what's coming. And that's been the biggest. It's almost like it's a joy. It's actually quite releasing to be able to do that now. Like waking up and saying, okay, what's going on today? Like what do I feel? What am I being nudged to do? Where do I want to walk? Where, like what woods do I want to go to? All of those things. Whereas before, maybe 10, not 10, 15, yeah, 15, 20 years ago, everything had to be structured and the way it had to be this way, it has to be this way. And that was not the way. That was the ego's way for me. That was the
Hmm.
ego keeping me small. And our soul is always guiding us, isn't it? It's always, whispering and nudging and go and read, go and watch that film, or go and eat this type of fruit, or just get up and move. And I personally think there's something really special in
Yeah.
that a lot of
There's
people
a,
resist.
oh, sure. And there's a deep level of trust required, first of all, that you're going to be taken care of, but
Yeah.
two, um, the words can be a little slippery here, but it's like it's never the thing, but the energy behind the thing. So we can kind of do nothing out of avoidance, or we can do nothing out of presence. And that is a very important distinction that I'm sure you work with clients on, as I do. And yeah, I just think it's so beautiful, the work that any mentor that's really helping business owners come into more presence, because ultimately that presence is leading to more trust, and trusting that your presence is enough is a huge gift, and to
Mhm.
use your words, priceless. So I'm curious how you are yeah, just how you're finding your work currently. When I say finding, I mean experiencing your work currently with business owners, knowing that there is this collective shift happening. What are some of the issues that you're really enjoying supporting clients with currently?
I think for the last little while, I've seen a lot of clients have come to me when they've been confused, or they've been so confused by the mass of things that are out there. And there's lots of things on the internet just now about finding your own way, doing it your own way. A lot of people don't know what their way is
Yeah.
because they're so bamboozled by all the things, the shiny things, the confusion, the distraction. And often the distraction keeps them looped around and
Hmm.
further distraction because there's a distraction loop there for them. So that's what's actually keeping them further from the truth because they are going from this thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, thinking that that has the answers, and that's keeping them further from themselves. So a lot of the work I do with the business owners that I have worked with and do work with is around really honing in on who they are, like what are they really good at? What is their genius? And sometimes it's so easy, it feels so easy and translucent for them that they often think that they can't be paid for that, or that's too easy or too quick, or, it's like, how can I be paid for doing, I do it so quickly, I do it so naturally. That is why,
And
so
the ego wanting to make it harder than it is.
yeah. So there is a lot of work I do around that with my clients, and also seeing, and because my client retention is really high. So my clients work with me, they'll go away, come back, or they'll stay with me for a lengthy time. And because of that relationship, we can see through the loops pretty quickly, or I can spot them really fast when you're in that close proximity with someone. And just nip it in the bud really quickly before they have an opportunity to go off and do something that their ego wants to lead them on. So yeah, that is the work really. Really just combining their talents, their genius, getting them into the visionary positions that they are destined to be in,
Mm.
that they know they're here to share with the world. And that might not be the multi-millions for them, but it might be peace. It might be, let me build a business where I can be here for my family, I could be there for my kids, I can be there, to walk in nature, or just have peace, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful distinction because there's so, and I've gone through this with my own iterations of business where because I've worked with clients that created millions and that was part of their design to have that huge ripple effect. And then for other people, it may not be that
Yeah,
big, right? Like, and that's okay. And so that required a bit of release on my part that it had to be the person going for that next seven figure because it may not. And I have plenty of clients that I absolutely adore working with that's not necessarily to their sacred desire, that
yeah,
they don't need to hit those numbers. And yet the journey of discerning that is so juicy because there's that stripping down and getting really raw and honest. And sometimes it looks like letting go of that seven figure desire altogether. And then it actually happens anyway. So there's
yeah,
just so many different ways that can look. And so ultimately, I think it's a beautiful, part of our own. I don't know if you want to call it marketing or whatever, is to
yeah,
just be very clear and honest that if someone's just wanting something different in their business, that in and of itself can be the impetus for a transformational
yeah,
journey with a business mentor or a spiritual business mentor, to be
mhm,
precise. And to your point, a lot of times people are, falling into shiny object syndrome. I've called it SOS for short, where it's like they're literally just continue reaching outside themselves. And
yeah,
sometimes, it's kind of like the maturation journey. You have to do that enough times to realize, oh shit, I just walked into the bar again for
yeah,
that drink when I said that I was done drinking, right? Because it literally is a
yeah,
form of addiction when
yeah.
you just keep thinking the next shiny object is going to be some magic pill versus rooting within yourself. So I love what you're up to.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, I've loved this. I've loved this conversation. I've loved everything about this today. You're speaking my language. I love it. And I think because of both of our backgrounds and the work that we've done previously, that's really, it's impactful, I think. I think there's just so much impact yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think there's so many changes going on in the industry just now. So many changes, not even in the industry. I don't even like saying that word because I work with a lot of business owners that are outside the industry as well, not just in the
Mhm.
coaching space,
Sure.
that are, yeah, just a variety of different business owners. Um, but definitely there's something really shifting at the moment for a lot of people, and moving away from, you know, this need to be busy all the time, or this need to always be seeking and chasing and doing and all of these things, and actually locking in who they really are. And I think that's so important. So
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really foundational because the truth is that if you are creating a business from that energy that you just described, the chasing, the busy work, there's a neurotic fear in there. And that actually is not sustainable. Like at
Mm.
some point or other, it has to be addressed and that will affect the business. So it's the sooner the better for addressing the foundational pieces. And what I think is beautiful about this conversation too is that you can be an established entrepreneur. Like you could be a decade in and still require attention to these foundational pieces.
Yep.
And I think, and I'd be curious if you agree with me or not, but I do believe that you will know that by the way that you feel, because it will feel
Yes.
like something is not quite right. And that's part of why you end up in SOS, the shiny object syndrome, is because something feels not quite right. So you keep searching, seeking, looking, grabbing, grasping. And that is a telltale sign that there's foundational work to be done.
100%. And I think it's often, again, like the distraction is the big piece. If they're always distracted from their true being and their true knowing and their soul, there's two businesses. I always say there's always the ego built business or the soul built business.
Mhm. Mm.
And you know, this they're just built very differently.
Yeah.
And I think at the moment, when there are people grasping and like in the masses, it's because there is something that they don't maybe some people don't even want to admit that there's something missing within them. Not missing, but it's like, what would it look like if I looked in myself in the mirror and realized who I really am, my real power, like what I really bring to humanity? That can be quite scary for a lot of people. It's
Yeah.
like, fuck.
Yeah, what you're pointing to is what I am currently really, really loving about my own work, which is the intimacy factor. And it's always been there, but it just wasn't so front and center. And again, it's part of why I love Tantra practice so much and what it has to do with business, because it cultivates that intimacy with self that then translates to intimacy with others. And you can actually have a business that feels really, really juicy and satisfying without you leaving your center to be in relationship and to be in partnership. And I always use the word codependency because that's the word that I knew for a long
Mhm.
time, that like I'm giving up parts of myself, I'm disconnecting from myself, I'm abandoning myself
Yeah.
to stay in partnership. And so that word codependency felt really heavy. And then I realized like most of the world is doing this. They just don't call it codependency. They're just and they
Yeah.
might be doing it in more subtle ways. It's not,
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't appear as like love addiction or whatever.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, more often than not, there's just a deep lack of intimacy with self when we fall into this shiny object syndrome. And I think it's safe to assume that if for our viewers, anybody watching the replay, if you are so very tired of the shiny object syndrome, this is your call to face
Yeah.
yourself, to prioritize intimacy. And if that's a struggle for you, then to also, prioritize support with being intimate with yourself. And I don't mean intimate in a sexual way. I mean,
No.
intimate, not that that can't also be true, but
Yeah.
intimate in a way that allows you to know, love, and trust yourself no matter what's happening in and outside of business.
100%. And it's just when people are in that level of consciousness and that awareness, you can notice things so subtle, so fast. Like
Mhm.
the conversation that you may be having with a partner or a business partner or a client, like just something so subtle. But when you're when you're really trusting yourself and really trusting who you are, you catch these moments faster. And that could make such a difference in business. It could make such a difference in relationships. Like just knowing, if I say this thing because it's coming from ego, then this is going to play out in this impact in this relationship. And it just changes the dynamic really quickly. So, yeah, and it could be
Yeah.
so small, the
Yeah, but the way
contraction.
we do the small things is the way we do the big things. So it's so
Yeah,
important not to brush that, under the rug, so to speak, because this is really what we're talking about is self-leadership.
yep,
And the world, we're talking about the shifts happening within the coaching industry, but also outside the coaching industry, just business in general. It's like we need more leadership, and that starts one person at a time. So it's a really, yeah, it's such a gift to humanity when we prioritize this intimacy with ourselves and knowing ourselves inside out. And when we're in fear-based ego and when we're
yep.
in heart-centered, sacred direction. Yeah.
I love that.
Such a
Yeah.
beautiful conversation.
Oh, I've loved it. Thank you.
Yes. So is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers and anything that, well, first definitely share where to find you, but outside of that, if there's anything else that you want them to know or impart upon our final time together?
I think the biggest message that I have and would love to share with people is to take that time to be present. There's nothing out with anyone, it is really within us and at moment to moment. It's not day to day. It's for me, it's moment to moment, and just moving through that and knowing that anything can change in a second, any second we have, and surrender to that. Get excited by that. Be
Mm,
excited by, oh, feel the pleasure and the joy and expansion from that. Like, what am I able to receive? What am I able to give? And the service that you can give from that place. That would be the biggest message that I would have for anyone watching this.
yeah,
Um,
because it is such a ripple effect, right? Like when we're following our joy, such a big ripple.
and it's not just, I always think when we work with one client, it's not just the client that we're impacting. It's generations, it's family, it's children, it's people around them, it's
Oh, yeah.
it's neighbors, it's everyone. It's not just, so when we're impacting one person, we're impacting many, many more that we don't realize that we're impacting on, and that is huge,
Yeah,
huge.
it is. It really is. Honestly, that during some of the hardest periods of my life when I was, shedding ego and facing identity deaths and all the things, it was like, no matter how few clients I might have had during a transitional period or something, like
Mm-hmm.
to realize, and that was part of why I also felt called to continue working with helping professionals and other coaches and mentors and stuff, is because they were then touching their clients. And sometimes their clients were also mentors and helping professionals, and then parents and business owners who are leading. So it's just like the ripple is so big when we really like follow that sacred direction. So yeah, I love what you're saying.
One of my clients said to me last week, they said that they've learned to hold space even deeper since working with me. And that I thought that is such a gift to give to their clients, because
Mm-hmm.
they're then, it's like a domino effect, isn't it? If we can hold the space for someone with so much depth, so much compassion, so much love, they will naturally be able to then do that with their own people, their own clients. And it's like, it just changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Presence is the gift that keeps on giving.
presence is the gift. So be present, people. Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I'm just plain and simple. Simplicity is big for me. Louise Fernando, and the same on Instagram as well. So
Awesome. Yeah,
thank
I'll make
you
sure.
very much for having me on, Lanie.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'll make sure that your links go in the description and that way people can find you when this gets shared. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch and hearing how things continue to unfold for you. And
Thank you.
yes, we will talk soon. I'll make sure you get the replay link as well.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.